I think what's happened is organizations become ingrained in the processes that they use. So, for example, with the mass transit projects that I've been looking at, and 77% are over budget. As a PMO or as a funding agency for all of those projects, do you realize the implications? You fund 5 or 6 projects, they all go over budget. Now you have no funds. What do you do? So you try and prioritize one project over another. It becomes a nightmare of resource allocation. And
Mm.
so I'm thinking that even with organizations that don't understand the implications of projects being failing, that they will understand that all the chaos that's being caused could be corrected if you use a better technology.
Have you ever looked at your enterprise portfolio dashboard and thought, how did we get here again? Red status lights across multiple projects, budget overruns that seem to multiply overnight, and that sinking feeling that you're managing chaos instead of driving strategic value. If you've ever wondered how to move beyond this reactive cycle to actually predicting and preventing project failures before they derail your portfolio, then this episode is for you. Welcome, Professor Paul Boudreau. At Powering ProjeX, we champion the growth of project people, empowering every subscriber to lead with distinction, drive impactful outcomes, and turn vision into victory. Through sharp insights, inspiring stories, and energetic conversations, we will celebrate the exceptional people who transform industries and build a better world. Welcome back to Powering ProjeX, the podcast where we explore the strategies, tools, and insights that drive successful project and portfolio management in today's rapidly evolving business landscape. I'm your host, DK, and today we're thrilled to be joined by Professor Paul Boudreau. Paul is a distinguished project management expert with over 35 years' experience in the technology industry and a globally recognised authority on applying artificial intelligence to project and portfolio management. But before we kick off, if you want to join a community that puts your career first, gain global connections, cutting-edge skills, and hear from voices just like yours who are shaping the project management industry, subscribe to the podcast now. In a recent webinar, I heard Rory Sutherland say, "Are we too impatient to be intelligent?" Maybe that's exactly the problem. In the PMO, we're often so busy firefighting that we never pause to implement the intelligent tools that could prevent the fires in the first place. If you've ever wondered if this is possible and how to move beyond your reactive cycle to actually predicting and preventing project failures before they derail your portfolio, then this episode is for you. Welcome, Professor Paul Boudreau. Paul is the author of 3 groundbreaking books: Applying Artificial Intelligence to Project Management, How the Project Management Office Can Use Artificial Intelligence to Improve the Bottom Line, and The Self-Driving Project, Using Artificial Intelligence to Deliver Project Success. And I've read them all. As a college professor in Oshawa, Canada, and a sought-after speaker at project management events worldwide, Paul has dedicated his career to improving project success rates through the strategic application of AI technologies. His expertise spans machine learning, natural language processing, and genetic algorithms, all applied practically to the world of project delivery. Today, we're going to explore the most compelling use cases for AI in enterprise portfolio and project management, discuss how organizations can be more intentional and organized in their approach to AI, and tackle some challenging truths about project reporting, transparency, and decision making. So let's dive in.
Thanks very much, Daniela. Happy to be here.
Paul, in your 3 books and extensive research, you've consistently emphasized that we need to move beyond the 50% project success rates that have plagued our industry for decades. From your perspective, what are the most compelling AI use cases that can genuinely transform project success rates, and how do they address the root causes of project failure?
Wow, great question. Great start, Daniela. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank you for the introduction. Um, you were talked about being reactive, and that's really what we need to do. We need to be proactive. We need to flip that switch. We need to be proactive in project management. We need to do more in this planning stage. And as project managers, we've tried to do it. We try to do it, but you know what the sponsor says or the customer says? I've just given you $4 billion to start this project. Why isn't it started? Where's the code? Where's the foundation? Why have you? Well, we need to get it right up front, and it takes a long time. But now that we have AI tools, it's going to be faster to get that in place. And the issue in project management, the biggest issue in project management is we don't have the right tools. Okay. So, Daniela, if I were to ask you, as a project manager, I want you to go outside the studio right now, wherever you are, and here's your project: dig a hole in the ground using your bare hands. Well, wait a minute. What is she going to say? Well, no, well, there's a shovel ready. Can I use a shovel? No, no, a shovel is new technology. We don't use new technology in project management. Well,
Mm,
what about like a tractor no, that's even more new technology. We're asking project managers to complete projects and they don't have the right tools. So in terms of the
mm,
most compelling use case, here's what I want to talk about first of all. I want to talk about honesty and expectations. This is a general use case, okay? And when I say honesty and expectations, I mean that planning stage where we get the budget right, we get the schedule right, we get the scope of the project right, and we start the project. And research has been done that says if you start the project in the first 3 or 4 months, go great, then that leads you to a greater probability of success and a lower probability of having this project that's a complete disaster. Um, the problem in project management is we start the project, and then the day after we start, it's complete chaos. Like, how does that happen? We really
mm.
need to be. We really need to be better at this. And AI is the tool that can help validate and make sure we have accurate scope, schedule, and budget, and risk for that matter.
That's a really interesting statistic that you've just noted. That what did you say in the first 4 months?
The first
Could
three
you?
or 4 months, research has been done out of Oxford University. If
Yeah.
your project in the first 3 or 4 months is going well, you have a greater probability of success. A lot of
Wow.
projects, the failure or the signs of failure happen very early, but we don't recognize them.
Wow. 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 So that's a really good one because that is something that you could write an algorithm for to detect really early.
It's been
Fantastic.
It's been done.
Yeah.
There are tools to do that. And I'm not going to mention any applications, but they exist. There's a company in Australia
Okay.
that does it right now that can forecast ahead of time what's going to happen in your project.
Wow. Okay, so now I'm really keen to hear about your research, your recent research, which forms the basis of your PhD, which I was really excited to hear about, and I can't wait to read it. Can you tell us what you've learnt through that activity?
Oh, wow. Yeah, in 30 seconds. So my research I've been working on for my doctorate is about large infrastructure projects, and more specifically mass transit projects. So what I discovered in the research in collecting data from government sources is that mass transit projects have a 77% probability of going over budget. And that's underestimated because what's happened in some of these projects is they've reduced the scope so they stay on budget. And this leads us into a phenomenon which has been exposed by Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, and also elaborated on by Oxford professor Bent Fleabag. And he talks about bias, cognitive bias in project management, anchoring bias, main one being optimism bias. As humans, we are optimistic. Well, listen, we are, right? We believe we're going to learn more. We believe we're going to do well. We believe we're going to have a good career. We are optimistic. When it comes to projects, that can be a problem because we're optimistic in the budget, we're optimistic in the schedule. And so, what my research is doing is using machine learning tools, unsupervised and supervised learning, to validate project budgets with objective criteria. Not I'm trying to screen out any possible optimism bias in project budgets and use objective criteria. And I've collected a number of variables and I correlate that and validate project budgets with it. And so far, it's come out at a can I reveal this? I guess I can. Why not? It's a 94% correlation that I can validate a project budget, which is pretty high considering that I'm only using a certain number of variables, and there are other variables that impact projects that I couldn't get reliable data on, such as, do we have to acquire right of way land for this? Are we going to double track a mass transit system? Are we going to add more lights and signals? There are other factors, but with the factors that I have, I've got a 94% correlation to validate a project budget before the project begins, based on what the scope of the project is.
So I'm going to go back to my thoughts around Rory Sutherland, who asked, are we too impatient to be intelligent? And when I looked at the slow adoption of AI in project management, despite its proven benefits, I wonder if this impatience is exactly what's keeping organizations stuck in that 50% success rate or potentially even lower. So, from your experience, are we sabotaging our own success because we're too impatient to invest in intelligent approaches that AI enables, or is it something else?
Yes, we're too impatient. So let me do a quick correction. So we're not 50% successful. The metrics coming out are saying between 30 and 40%.
Yeah.
And success is defined different ways, but mainly it means achieving the budget with the original scope and being on time. Smaller projects, that are only 6 months long, they can achieve. Mega projects, for example, the study on mega projects over, I think it's $100 million, they are 2% successful. So we are. Listen, I have to give you an analogy here, Daniela. If you're going in for surgery, hopefully not something too serious, and the surgeon comes to you and says, "Oh, Daniela, yeah, there's a 35% success rate for this surgery." Like what? And yet, in project management, we accept it. How is that possible? How is that possible? Now, yes, in surgery, they have, policies, procedures, assistants, they have a whole thing. And we do have policies and procedures in project management, but we don't apply the technology and we don't apply the process for that technology. So, are we impatient? Yes. Listen, AI is not easy. It's challenging, and we tend as humans to take the path of least resistance. AI
Mhm.
requires us to do training. AI is not a turnkey solution. It's not like you're deploying like a ERP system where you put it in, everybody starts using it. AI is more like I compare it to like an Excel spreadsheet. You can do all sorts of things with it. And when you start out, you do something simple and then oh yeah, I can do this. AI has many possibilities. And we need training and knowledge to be able to understand how to apply the right capability for the project that we're seeking. We have to know about data. We have to know about data reliability and getting the right data. We have to know about ethical issues in AI. So AI is not easy. If there's impatience and resistance, it's to a certain extent because there is a bit of of an issue there, in that we have to become more knowledgeable. But the thing is, once you have the knowledge, it becomes easy.
Mm,
Trust me. I've seen over the past 3 years, the research I've been doing in AI has become much, much easier. And I'm not talking about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a different area. I'm talking about machine learning specifically to make decisions and look at logical paths for how the project should be managed.
mm. I want to step back just to something you said there around knowledge and becoming more knowledgeable, because there is a part of this where I often meet organizations, Paul, where the leadership team is not fluent on current research, especially around project success rates. It is not something that is even discussed. There is this extreme positivity bias that every project we go into has the potential of success, without acknowledging that the reality is the research suggests that that is not the case. Um, do you find in your work that there is a lot of having to educate people on the realities of project management?
Uh, to a certain extent, I'll say yes. But I think what's happened is organizations become ingrained in the processes that they use. So, for example, with the mass transit projects that I've been looking at, and 77% are over budget. As a PMO or as a funding agency for all of those projects, do you realize the implications? You fund 5 or 6 projects, they all go over budget. Now you have no funds. What do you do? So you try and prioritize one project over another. It becomes a nightmare of resource allocation. And
Mm,
so I'm thinking that even with organizations that don't understand the implications of projects being failing, that they will understand that all the chaos that's being caused could be corrected if you use a better technology.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so getting back into it, at the portfolio level, it's my observation that organizations struggle with project prioritization, resource allocation, and capacity planning across competing initiatives. So, this creates almost the perfect storm where portfolios balloon, and yet the workforce expresses overwhelm, right? We've got so much going on. So, how can AI help enterprise leaders make more informed decisions and choices when prioritizing their planning for their portfolio?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know organizations struggle with this. AI is about value, finding value. And I think organizations are about projects. Projects are about finding value. And in terms of priorities, really the answer is everything you asked for already exists. So
Mm,
sorry to disappoint people if they're expecting some futuristic answer. In terms of prioritizing projects in an organization across multiple projects, 100 projects in an organization, uh, I have a tool that does that already. And it's being used by one of my partners in Europe. And that's available. In terms of prioritizing resources, there is an organization, there's a company in Europe that does it. They work in the defense industry where they have 4,000 different resources working on different projects, and they have to prioritize them. They're using AI to prioritize and resource load those activities. So this is not really a future activity. The things that you're talking about exist now. And it's just a matter of, as we said, knowledge, finding out about them, going out and talking to vendors or looking on the internet to find out the tools that are available to do this.
are there any case studies out there, Paul, that might give us some indication as to the successes that people are having using these AI tools that we could potentially share?
There are case studies. There's not a lot of them because what's happening, here's a secret. So, an organization starts to use AI and they discover that their projects are progressing much, much better, much more successfully. Um, they don't want to tell their competitors.
Of course they
And
don't.
so there's a lot of undercurrent of it. I have seen organizations, and you will see an occasional case study where organizations do it. Again, I would go to the vendors. There is one of the vendors I work with out of the UK on agile projects. The case studies that he uses shows that the use of AI, for every dollar that's spent, the organization saves $1,000.
Wow.
So that's available. It's not really publicized, but then I don't think people are searching for it. But this is
Mm.
another opportunity. This is another opportunity in project management. I want to use this moment to talk about how using AI in your project processes can become a competitive advantage. What I mean by that is, let's say you're an organization, and what you do is I don't know, you build hospitals, you build schools, you build roads, and you build bridges. But you have a 95% success rate. You're very productive. You provide incredible value to your sponsoring or funding organization. What happens next? That funding organization or that sponsor comes to you and says, well, it looks like you've got an amazing project management process. Why don't you do something else for me? Look, there's there's a wind farm, there's a solar site I want to develop. Can you do that? Well, it's not really in my current scope of business. And they say, yes, but you have such great project management processes. You'd be good at it. And so now this project management process, enabled by AI or machine learning technology, has the ability to expand the offerings of that organization to make that organization more successful. Isn't that something that organizations want to, accomplish? You know what I
Well,
mean?
they aspire
Aspire.
to. Yeah.
Thank you. They would aspire to having that. And as I said, right now, project management success rates are 30 to 40%. We're not at 95% yet. I say 95 and not 100 because I think it's going to take more reliable data to get up to 100%, and we're not quite there yet. So 95% should be the target.
Okay. And going back to your point about agile and the research, is that Martin Paver by any chance?
Martin Paver's involved in it, yes, but there is
Okay.
another person there, Colin Hammond in the UK.
Okay. All right. I will go looking for those people after this and see if I can find
Definitely.
that research and put it into the show notes. So thank you for sharing it. Um, One of the persistent challenges in enterprise environments is achieving transparency and truth in project reporting. So, I read recently a report from the Victorian Auditor General here in Australia, which was titled Our Major Projects Performance Reporting Report for 2024, which highlighted challenges with how the public sector reports performance on major projects, with the entities not consistently reporting on time, cost, scope change, and benefits transparently. So just remembering it's not the fact that they're not reporting. It's that the Victorian Auditor General found that there was more data available than what was reported. So,
Yeah.
how can AI help address these transparency and accountability issues within both the public and private sector for portfolio management purposes? And do you think that governments around the world will leverage and adopt AI and its use cases for portfolio reporting and make it more mandatory at some point in time? I mean, would that be a benefit or would there be pitfalls?
Yes, it's an absolute benefit. Will they do it? That's a great question. So I want to address this, I think, in three different ways. First of all, um, what governments are reporting are historical metrics. And what we need to do is report predictive metrics. Think of yourself at the end of it's a 3-year project. And you look back in those 3 years and say, wow, I wish I had known all those issues that came up. And wouldn't you like to have known that at the beginning of the project? That's what machine learning is. They are prediction tools. They
Mm.
predict based on the environment, based on the project conditions, based on whatever variables you've collected. They predict what's going to happen to your project very successfully. And again, organizations are doing this now. Second thing I want to talk about is governments collecting information. And I do not want to get into politics, but being in the North American side, there are reductions in US government employees. And I think what's happening in other countries as well, they're looking at reducing the number of people in public service. And I think the short sightedness in that is that these government organizations are collecting data. And rather than just getting rid of employees, you have to be careful to look at the data they're collecting and make sure that they're collecting consistent data, comprehensive data, the same data over time, because this is the data that will allow you to use new technology. Whether it's machine learning, AI, whether it's um, other technologies, right? What's the other one? Cryptocurrency, a bit. What's the
Bitcoin?
network? Sorry?
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin. What's the network that Bitcoin's on?
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
I've lost it. But if you want to use these innovative new technologies, even not just now, but in the future, you need the data. And I think
Mm.
organizations in their plans to reduce the size of the civil service and make money are leaving this part of it out. So that is critical. That is critical. Do governments need to collect data? Absolutely yes. Will they? I don't know. They need to understand what they're doing. The third part in terms of metrics is something I call stickiness. And you probably haven't heard of this. It's in one of my books. um, Entrepreneurs use this term, stickiness, and
Yes.
different big organizations use the term stickiness. And what stickiness means is if I develop this feature on my product, um, does it increase the likelihood that my customer will keep using this product? And I guess the best example would be smartphones. So if you're using an iPhone, do the features that they develop keep you invested in upgrading to new iPhones? So this stickiness metric is something in project management that we can use to detect what metric is it that will keep the project on track. Right now we have these KPIs, right? Oh, let's do KPIs. We're doing, risk and changes and, what's the earned value management metrics, CV, SV, CPI. We just collect them all. But do we know which ones are the most predictive of the project?
Mm.
And I'm trying to do research on a movement towards identifying the metrics for a project that are the stickiest, okay? And that is which ones should you really be paying attention to? And when
Mm.
they change, that's going to be an issue for your project success and project delivery. There has been academic studies on that, on earned value management. Again, not widely known. Hopefully, in my role now as getting a doctorate and being linked to practical application of these things, I can produce more evidence of how this would work and how to implement it in projects.
Wow. Great answer. And thank you for covering all of those elements. Really, really good insights.
Isn't it
Um,
interesting?
it's really interesting. I suppose from a leadership perspective, whether you are leading an organization, big or small, or leading government, being able to predict, as you said, I've gotten to this point in my life looking at all of this research where I think to myself, there are only two ways that you are going to improve. The first would be the easy road to just say, my portfolio is worth $1 million. I'm going to budget for 1.7 because the reality is it is going to go over. If I do nothing, that will be my reality. But the second option is to take this harder road, which is to invest in how do we understand our data and use that to our advantage to be more predictive in our understanding rather
Absolutely.
than reactive to what we're doing. We've been using the same methods, tools, and techniques for a long, long time, and we are not improving. That's how it feels.
Let me give you another example. Okay. So I have different philosophies on things now that my mind has been opened to all the possibilities of AI. And one of them is what I call binary risks. I know, everybody out there listening to this, I know how you do risk management. I can tell you right now. You do what's the risk, what's the probability, what's the impact. That's 1980s technology that was developed. My philosophy is that risks are binary. That means one or zero. And I'm right. And I can prove
Mm,
I'm right. At the
mm.
end of your project, look at your risk register. A risk has either happened or it didn't happen, one or zero. You're
Yep.
spending all your time. Oh, is it 10%? Is it 20%? You're guessing. But
Yes.
risks are binary. It's either 100% or zero. And
Yes.
what we're doing with AI technology is moving the fact that risks are binary from the end of the project to the beginning of the project, right? Because we can be predictive. Now, we do need the data. We do need to correlate things. It's not simple to do. It will get easier as time goes on. And will we capture all the risks? Maybe not. But if you have 200 risks on your project, and all of a sudden you can narrow that down to, well, I only have 20 now. What do you do with the risks that you've predicted is going to be 100%? Included in your scope, included in your budget. What about a
Yes.
risk that's zero?
Correct.
What about a risk that's zero? Ignore it. So all of a
Correct.
sudden, our philosophy on risk management, which was rooted in 1980s, 1983, I think was the exact date. So now we update it to use machine learning tools to look at making risks binary.
Mm. So, such a good answer. And can I just, sorry to do this to you, but I just want to dive down that rabbit hole a little bit further.
Sure.
Been doing lots of research, reading Bent's papers, and in the book, How Big Things Get
How
Done,
big things get done.
yeah, he talks about reference class data. And for me, risk is one of those elements where we can create really good reference class data. Do you believe that that is how we progress forward with risk management? Or is it actually, is it actually something else? Are we taking data from the industry, or can we just take it from within our organizations and say, if you structured everything you know about risk in your reference class, you would come up with much better outcomes to risk management?
So I have to answer it two ways. First of all, yes, you may be able to do it in your own project organization if you've got enough. You may be able to have to do it externally to your organization. But can I reveal a secret? Okay,
Please.
so in my doctoral studies, I've been analyzing all the literature on reference class forecasting, which you mentioned. And what I've done, so reference class forecasting is go back and look at the closest project to yours and use that data as a benchmark. The criticism of Professor Fleberg, the criticism of reference class forecasting is that there's no magic way or process to determine what the best reference class is. What is the best project? So in my doctoral studies, I've discovered it. So what I've done is I'm using unsupervised learning. It wasn't deliberate. It was kind of part of what I was doing. I'm using unsupervised learning. And what I've done is I've taken all of these projects and I've classified them into different classes. And at the end of the doctoral studies, I've realized that, well, this is the way we can use reference class forecasting. Instead of just guessing what it is, go use machine learning and look at how your projects are classified and pick the project that's closest to being classified to yours. And again, it's not subjective. It's an objective decision. The machine learning tools analyze all the variables and they do regression analysis to determine which project is the closest to yours. So that's how
Wow.
reference class forecasting should be done. That's probably not going to come out until October. So please just, I
Oh,
won't say keep it to yourself. Keep it in the back of your head that I was the first one who came out with it. Who knows? Maybe it'll go somewhere. I don't know. But as I
oh, well,
said,
I hope
the biggest issue was that people were struggling to find a correlation between their project and what they should use. And of course, how are they doing it? Optimism bias, cognitive bias. And now there is an actual objective machine learning mechanism, very simple to use actually, to determine which project
Wow.
it is. I could go to an organization and probably do this in half an hour.
Wow. That is amazing. And you came up with that purely out of experimentation in
Well,
doing your
it was
research?
part of my research. I had it in the back of my mind when I started, because as I was going through my literature review, I noted that this was an issue, and there are different researchers who've criticized the approach. Not that it wasn't correct, but that it was difficult to move back and find it. So I did this. So my research won't be published probably, as I said, until October, and then after that, I may produce a blog specifically on or a paper specifically on reference class forecasting and what my studies have found.
I am so thankful that I have met you. Can I tell you? I am
And,
so, so thankful to you.
and this isn't our first interview.
No, this is like our fourth. But it's really funny when I look back on the discussions we had in 2019, 2020,
I
2021.
know.
I know it was so long ago, and it was all the makings of these things, but we hadn't evolved to this level. And I actually think that the discussions we had were just a little bit too early for many people. I was bought into it because I was praying and hoping that something, would come along and give us more intelligence about what we are doing. But it has just evolved beautifully. And you have been a real leader in this field, Paul, and you should be very proud of yourself and
Oh,
what you have
thank you.
achieved. Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
should.
Appreciate that.
Uh, yeah, I'm very,
I
I
need to
feel
get
like
this
I'm
out
in.
into the world.
You need to. We will. Don't worry. We will persevere. Uh, okay. So, for business leaders listening today that are unsure of the potential of AI and its uses for portfolio management, what's your recommendation?
What's my recommendation? Um, you know, First of all, you need to do some training, build up your knowledge, make sure you understand what you're doing. And I have I have taught students in Europe, and so I've taught I think 3 or 4 years now. I have project management students who've taken an AI and project management course, and they are proliferating through these organizations in Europe, and it's quite interesting. They'll send me messages saying, "Paul, I'm in this organization now, and they're doing it this way." And I looked at my boss and said, "What? Why aren't you using?" So it's starting to evolve. So how should organizations do it? They should think about improving their knowledge, searching for vendors. There's a lot of great vendors out there. There's a lot of great courses out there, and what you really need in an organization is you need a champion. So you need
Mm,
somebody who believes in this, and then what you have to do is enable that champion. And I was recently on a call with a government organization, and they asked me what are the 3 things we need to do to make the public service more efficient. And one of the things I talked about is I said you have people in there who are really bought into this, and are you enabling them? Do you have a community of practice? Right? Are you sending them to the right organizations? Are you letting them talk to the right people? And I know you haven't asked this, but I want to talk about a bit of an offshoot here because it's about organizations and the way things are going, and it's about automation. Um, for me, automation is about operationalizing things. It's about operations organizations and how does it apply project management. My opinion, Daniela, is is automation using ChatGPT or using the generative AI tools, they make you more productive. And in project management, they're going to make us fail faster. That's my belief. So
wow.
if you are in an operation, you love being more productive because it saves you money. In
Hmm.
project management, being more productive is not going to solve a 30% success rate.
Mm,
In project management, it's the logic and decision making that's going
mm-hmm.
to improve the project success rate. So, as an organization, as a portfolio manager, please don't get lulled into this false sense of security with productivity tools from AI. Yes, they are important. Yes, they're great. And yes, they will give us value in the project world. But I'm not convinced that they're going to improve the project success rate.
This is very interesting. When you say productivity tools, can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
Well, what people are doing is using generative AI tools, for example, and they'll say, well, here's my scope document, create a schedule. And
Mm,
rather than spending 6 or 8 hours creating a schedule from that scope document, you have a generative AI tool that creates a schedule for you in 30 minutes, right? So there's scope documents, and I did a research study with some students. I called them project managers, but they weren't really. They were just project management students, and they looked at a scope document I had, and I said, find the errors. And so I had these students. I can't remember what they found. They found a number of errors. ChatGPT, which I compared it to, found more errors, but didn't find all the errors. My students actually found more errors than the generative AI tool found. So they're not perfect yet. But one of the interesting results was that my students would take an hour to review the scope document, and the generative AI tool took 14 seconds. So the
yeah,
outcome is that these productivity tools are 200 times faster than what
yes.
humans can do. So that's kind of the level exponential level of productivity that we're talking about here.
But what you're really saying is the excitement around the productivity boom is false. And it is lulling you into a false sense of security because the reality is it is the skill. And this once again goes back to something that Bent talks about in his research around the concept of experience and how really important that is when we are working through projects. But once again, it's not foolproof, it's just an added value. Is that
Let
right?
me talk about experience. So there is a machine learning technology. It's one of these futuristic things, which you may ask me later on. It's called reinforcement learning, and reinforcement learning is learning not to make the same mistake twice. In project management, we call this experience. But
Yes.
when I do my talks and I'm standing in front of an audience and I'll ask somebody, what did you have for lunch 3 days ago? They have no idea.
No idea.
Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, proved that human memory is fallible. And so relying on experience is not the greatest solution. Relying on data and machine learning tools, especially using reinforcement learning, where you build up the knowledge of a project. So you've worked on a project. Let's pretend you're capturing the risk, not the issues register. Every project has a meeting. What are the issues? What's the problems? And they capture, okay, here's the problem. What are the conditions? What's the proposed solution? Did that work or not? Organizations don't capture did it work or not. They just leave it at that and go on. But
Yes.
so you
Yes.
capture that. And I tell my students, okay, go work on a project in the real world. And maybe you come up with 10 of these issues. Then work on your second project, come up with another 10. Capture it in an Excel spreadsheet. After, 10 or 15 projects, you've started to build up this repository that you can use for reinforcement learning. Look, this same issue came up. What did we do last time? Did it work? No. Let's not make that same mistake twice.
Yes.
And as I said,
Yes.
we call this experience. Project managers have 10, 20, 30 years experience, but they really they lose it. I mean, not
No.
completely, but experience is not really helpful if you have all the data and you know exactly what worked last time you did this
Correct.
and what the project
Correct.
conditions were, what the environmental conditions were.
Correct. Correct. And you make such a valid point because how many project registers I look at where a lot of the time I don't know what the outcome was just by purely
Yeah.
reading the data. And risks is a really classic one. If I've been dealing with a risk The majority of my commentary is actually around discuss this, tried this, went on to this, it's evolved to this, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But I never actually record what was the end point and what
Yeah,
was the final thing that actually, what did we decide on? What did we implement? And I don't put enough context in that information to make it valuable down the line. But that's really where the value lies. What worked in
exactly.
your organization in that context? I often think to myself, we have so much data that we collect around projects. I mean, it is, there are some projects I've walked away and there are thousands of documents that we have collected and written and, had approved and drafted over a period of time. And it's just all so valuable, but we never go back and use it again. That's it.
Yes, and
We
you know
archive it.
what? Yes, and you know what? It's we keep thinking we have to make this big. It's called a data lake.
Yes.
A data lake is where we keep all the information we can extract to use machine learning. We don't really have to use that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
important, but in terms of project management documentation, you can just feed it all into a generative AI tool, and it'll spit out the
Mm,
data for you. It'll give you your data variables that you can use for
yeah.
machine. It's
Yeah. It's
becoming a lot more straightforward.
fantastic. So you've emphasized the critical importance of data and obviously then data quality and the work that needs to be done. And you've emphasized that in your own research. What specific data foundations do organizations need to develop and establish before they can effectively leverage AI for project management? And how should they organize sort of the data collection and maintenance process to get to that first level?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a question for Martin Paver. But, it needs to be consistent. We need to have consistency in the data collection. We need to define the fields. And if you talk to the data experts and people who are doing machine learning, they'll say, yes, this is great data. This works, or this is great data. Let's add some more data fields. Let's do a bit of, data wrangling around it. That means collecting uh, different data, or feature engineering, which is I've got three data fields that mean the same thing. Maybe I just need one of these data fields. Um, I think in terms of data for project management, we need to make it an automated process. And we have the documents, and they're somewhere on a SharePoint server or some file server somewhere, file repository. And I would say, get some tools to go extract that data and do data mining on it, predictive analytics, get some insight out of it. Um, you can't really put a good data process in place until you see what you have and how you can use it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said with my research study where I'm at 94%, I don't have all the data, but I'm still
Mm-hmm.
getting 94%. Imagine if I was at 94% and I could say, well, wait a minute, let's collect these three other data fields on a consistent basis, and it takes me up to a higher regression level. Wouldn't that be
Mm.
amazing? So it's
Yeah, it
this
would be.
iterative process on the data that needs to be implemented, and I think it needs to be implemented by project managers. I haven't talked about this yet, but another one of my great findings from my dissertation is going to be about the tools that you use to do machine learning. And I initially went into this thinking I was going to have to write Python code. And in fact, I had written Python code for supervised learning, and I had another program on my laptop to do classification with. And as I got into it, and I started looking at these statistical analysis tools, and I'm talking about there's some out there called Minitab, IBM SPSS. There's something called Stata, I think. These statistical tools, which are commercially available, uh, and most organizations should own one if you're doing any quality work. Um, these tools now have neural network capability in them.
Wow.
And that's how I'm doing my machine learning. I don't have to explain all the hyperparameters around how I created this neural network. I'm using a statistical analysis tool, commercially available, using regression analysis, and I just do configuration options. I want
Wow.
one big layer in my neural network. And
Yeah.
so for me as an academic now, it's much more reproducible. But for machine learning people or even project managers in an organization, it's much more accessible. I could show you, I could do a demo in less than an hour and train you how to use this tool for machine learning to do a neural network. I'm sure you'd
Yeah.
have a lot of questions. So we're seeing AI move from the realm of customized code and data scientists to project managers who have sufficient knowledge in data and how machine learning works and some level of statistical ability. Don't have to be a mathematician, but some level of interpreting what an outlier is and how close my regression analysis is. So it's going away from this customized world into being more of a commodity that we can use as project managers. And I think that is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And that sort of now makes me wonder, once upon a time, as per your point, I wondered whether this would be a commercially driven evolution, being that we would look to large, commercial organizations to go and build this capability, and we would just feed all of our data in, and they would give us, we would have a subscription as a service over a long period of time for 25 users in our PMO. But now I'm starting to think that's actually not the case. That because of the tools and the way they're being developed, every organization has the opportunity to build this in house specific to your own organization. It's not shared with any other organization, and it becomes extremely intelligent about who you are, how you perform, and
Yeah.
how you can improve.
Yes, you know what? You hit on a great point. It's basically a free for all. Um, it's not like there is a Microsoft out there who controls all of your laptops and desktops, or Apple that controls all the operating systems. It is right now. It's a bit of a free for all. I don't know how it's going to work. There are large organizations who are trying to get AI into their tools like Primavera and Microsoft Project, they're adding one more little menu command that you'll never use, you know, and it's very difficult to add it after you've got this huge foundation of a Microsoft project. There are the vendors that I've talked about, these innovative organizations, both in Australia, UK, Europe, mainly the other side of the ocean from me, and they have some amazing solutions as vendors. And I encourage people to look at them because they are great solutions. And then there's the other alternative, which is, having a statistical package, having somebody very knowledgeable about how to do machine learning and doing it inside the organization. All of these are possible, and we don't know which one is going to win out or how it's going to go. I think in the end, it's going to depend on the organization. It's going to depend on the projects. It's going to depend on various factors. We're in a world that's rapidly evolving, and we don't know which one will win out, and maybe none of them. Maybe it's going to
Mm,
be a world where it depends on your project how you want to manage this solution. And as I said at the beginning, AI is more like an Excel spreadsheet than a fixed app. It's how do I want to use it? What do I want to do? And this is the challenge to organizations. I want to do it. What do I do next? And my answer is, what are you trying to solve? What
yes.
value do you want from implementing AI? Because this is project management is business. You have to
Yeah.
get value from it. So what's going to give you the greatest value? And then work your business case and do it that
Yeah.
way. And if you're completely
Yeah.
lost, just give me a call.
Yeah.
Give Daniela a call if you're in Australia.
Absolutely. No. So just continuing on from that, can you explain that distinction and guide our listeners on what to look for when evaluating AI solutions for their enterprise? But I think from what you've just said, it's really, once again, having the right goal is really important and understanding what it is that you want to achieve. But now it appears that there is a plethora of AI tools that the average man can implement and use with little guidance, because you're not having to build the neural network. It is, let's pump our data in, and it applies it for you, and then it gives you some learnings. And then it's just about tweaking until you get to the point of, that's what I needed to understand, and that's what I need to measure and understand on a regular basis. Is that right?
Yes, so it's a bit about understanding the skills in your organization and understanding the direction of your organization and understanding the business case and the value that you want to provide. If you have no one in your organization who really wants to do this kind of work, then you want to look to vendors, or
Mm,
maybe you want to look to large vendors like a Microsoft or something like that. Um, but understand the skills. If you have an IT department in the organization, and these IT people are really anxious to get working on machine learning solutions, then maybe this is a fantastic opportunity for them. Okay, can
mm,
you imagine an IT person, internally looking at machine learning solutions and working with a project manager, and the IT person knows where all the data is, and the project manager knows what problem they have to solve? And I'm going to bring up the word now in case you forget to ask me. What is one of the most important things about this? And that is collaboration.
yeah.
We need to collaborate with AI tools. And as the example I use, we collaborate with other people in the organization. Collaboration is absolutely critical. There have been
Mm,
studies done on both, I'm trying to think of the medical field, it's MRI brain scans and x-rays on children under 2, where the technicians have difficulty understanding the diagnosis. And so what they do is they put in AI tools, and the AI is better than the technician, higher probability, more accurate in diagnosing the condition. But if the two of them collaborate, then that level of
increase.
accuracy increases. So I think it was with X-rays of children under 2, New York City hospital. They can't diagnose pneumonia properly because the X-rays are too obscure, and technicians have a very low success rate. AI has a better success rate, maybe 80, 90%. But if the two of them collaborate, it goes up even higher, 95, 97%. So don't quote me on those numbers. It may be the MRI brain scans that I'm talking about, but the concept of collaborating with these AI tools is very
Mm.
critical.
And this has been in a lot of the literature that I've read lately around AI, and I couldn't quite understand it until a book I read literally just a week ago. But the concept that, humans are better at the creative tasks, we're better at the strategic thinking, and so on and so forth. And it took me a long time to really get on board with that concept, because when you're talking about predictive analytics and the AIs that can give you foresight into where you need to move, what you need to address, so on and so forth, it's like, well, that is strategic in its nature, because it's giving you a forward direction. And
Yeah.
if anything, I see humans failing to make those decisions on a regular basis as well. So it's very interesting now that you say this is really around collaboration, because there are things that we will see from a nuanced contextual basis that the
Yes.
machine won't see, but they can predict with better accuracy. So there is this dual relationship that's required. Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
I see that. I want to talk about the cycle, the new cycle that's coming out. I do want to talk about, first of all, PMI for any PMI listeners. They've got this concept, human in the loop, which I really don't
Mm,
like, because I feel that human in the loop is like a check mark against, oh, let's check what AI is doing. Let's check what AI is doing to make sure it's on track. Whereas collaboration has a bit of a different context, right? It's strategically working with AI. The latest philosophy that's come out, and you may have seen some articles on it. If not, you will. Is the three types of AI. First one, automation,
yeah,
which I've talked about.
yeah,
Second one, augmentation, which is what I've
correct.
talked about in terms of collaboration, is another way of saying augmentation. And the third one, there's different terminologies for it, but the third one can be called autonomy. I call it autonomy. And autonomy is like an autonomous agent. And that's where you don't need a human. You say, go manage this project for me. Now, you do need a human to make sure it starts off in the right track, make sure it's got the data. And if there are any issues that come out of it, then you go check. But basically, you have this autonomous agent that runs the project and runs everything. And actually, for those of you who are interested in it, I wrote about this in my book, The Self-Driving Project, before it was even popular. That's what it was. The self-driving project, it was about a project agent that does this and how they go about doing it. It's now become, they call it agentic agents. They call it
Agentic
AI
AI.
agents
Yep.
as well. You've probably heard of that one. And it's moving towards this autonomous project management world or autonomous agents. It's just basically like a automation, higher level of automation, which we do have to be careful about. But from a
Yeah.
project management perspective, that is a little bit more in the future.
Yeah, it's very interesting for anybody that wants to know a little bit more about that agentic AI. I am reading a great book about it at the moment, and the reason that I bring it up is they actually break down AI into 6 different levels, from the manual right through to the fully autonomous decision making and acting. That's the whole point, and
Yes,
it's called agentic artificial intelligence. And I can't remember who it's by. Who's it by?
I've read it. Yeah,
Oh, you've read it? Yeah,
I
it's
think I have it.
Harnessing AI Agents to Reinvent Business, Work and Life, which was very good as well, by
Yeah,
Pascal Bornet, who I actually follow on LinkedIn. I didn't realize that's where I got it from. But that research as well that you are talking about, PMI did highlight those 3 different levels in their latest survey, AI survey. So that information is there as well. But let's talk about business benefits now. Beyond the obvious efficiency gains, what measurable business outcomes can enterprises expect when they successfully implement AI into their portfolio and project management practices? And how should they structure their success metrics?
yeah. Well, you know what? I do think that the traditional metrics are still good. Scope, schedule, budget, they are good, but we need to make them more predictive. The
Mm,
other metric we haven't talked about is customer satisfaction. So I think the metric that will be in constant use is customer satisfaction, not just from a project perspective, but again, a predictive perspective. Is the customer still happy about the project? Does the customer still think there's value being received from this project? That kind of metric. And then, as I talked before about from a let's try and get our project process to be a competitive advantage. And how can we measure that? Is our project process better than what other people can do? And what is the success rate? What is our how have we managed to reduce the number of risks we have in a project? How have we managed to optimize the use of our resources? And then, as always, and Antonio talks about this, Antonio Nieto Rodriguez talks about the value of a project, and not just at the beginning of the project. We set a value for a project based on a business case at the beginning of a project, but let's assess the value as the project is being implemented. And are we still getting that value as we go through and deliver that project to the end?
mm. It's such an interesting point that you make about value, because unfortunately, what I see on a regular basis is that we become so wedded to doing the project. Even as value diminishes, we are not very likely to say, let's
Correct.
stop. And I love the idea that AI can give us an independent assessment that says your value has eroded to the point where what you are investing is actually not going to achieve the value statement that you want. So this is the point at which,
Yes.
this is that critical juncture point at which you might decide to not proceed with this project, because in its present formation, it's not going to achieve things. But it would be even better if the AI was able to give us advice and guidance early that says, you need to change course in the way you're delivering this, or as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, deal with these risks in a different way. And these are the risks that you should be focused on. Otherwise, you won't achieve that value statement or
Yeah.
proposition.
Yeah.
Is
So
that
here's
what we
yeah.
can expect?
Yeah, so here's what I see happening. And you bring up a very good point. So what tends to happen now is people are internally focused, get this project delivered. And the person who's externally focused is the sponsor or funding agency or customer, whoever it might be. And typically the customer comes along and says, okay, this project is not delivering any more value. That's it, close the project down. But with AI, what we can do is give that power that the customer has to the project manager. So now
Mm.
the AI can look at all the external factors, whether it's competitors, the regulatory environment, whatever ecological environment, environmental conditions, business case metrics, and give that power to the project manager to say, listen, this project is going off course from delivering value. And instead of the customer saying, let's stop the project manager now has an ability to kind of maybe re-vector that project so it gets back on track to delivering more value.
Love it. Such a good idea. You've mentioned achieving project success rates of 95% or higher with a proper AI implementation. Now, that's quite a remarkable improvement from where we are today. What specific AI capabilities drive such dramatic improvements, and what organizational changes need to accompany the technology implementation?
Well, you've hit on the exact point, and the biggest issue is change management. It's a simple one. It doesn't have to do with AI really. It has to do with how can I uh, realign this organization to take advantage of the technological capabilities that are available. Blockchain, there, I remembered it. Blockchain. So whether it's blockchain or machine learning or Internet of Things, whatever technology it is, how can I align my organization to take advantage of that technology? And that's how we're going to get to 95%. As I said, the AI and the machine learning tools, they're not so mysterious anymore. They're easily understood. We can train people in them. You can gain knowledge in them, and they can become as easy as using capabilities that you use currently in software tools. It
Mm,
will require a bit more statistical knowledge. It will require a bit more consistency of data, but that capability is going to be easily available. You don't need a data scientist. You don't need an IT person. So I
mm.
think if you're looking at your career, future career in project management, it's going to be using some form of AI to deliver that project. So start learning it now.
Yeah, the project management profession is clearly at an inflection point, Paul, with AI adoption. But my observation is that there's many people focused on individual productivity improvements versus enterprise applications. So, do you see that as well? I mean, we're seeing lots of people wanting to use ChatGPT, and you mentioned this earlier for incremental productivity improvements, but it's not in your mind, is that actually going to lead to any sort of success improvements? I think you mentioned no.
No, so we see this, as I said earlier, we take the easy path, and using generative AI is kind of an easy path, except we're not we're not addressing the ethical issues and the data issues and the analysis issues behind that. I was at a conference last year, and someone stood up and talked about ChatGPT and said, "Oh, PMI Infinity is better than ChatGPT because PMI Infinity will tell you the sources where it got the response from." And I waited till the person sat down and I said, "ChatGPT does that as well. You just have to ask it."
Yeah.
So we need training on how to use ChatGPT properly. There's a whole range of prompt engineering mechanisms out there, and and I think people are going to get caught up in that because it's really a fad. It's very buzzy, popular now. But in terms of project management, we have to focus and drill down on the machine learning aspect, this logic and decision making of what
Yeah.
goes on in a project. And the problem is that it's going to take time, right? And
Mm.
as I said, the sponsor, the customer, they want to see action. They want to see a shovel in the ground or your hands in the ground if you don't have a shovel because you don't use net technology. So, yeah, they want to see action. Using these machine learning tools is going to take a bit of time up front. But having said that, once you're engaged with it, it's going to become so easy and so routine that I
Mm,
think enterprises are going to really catch on. And the other
mm, mm,
observation I'll have is that the organizations, the project organizations that use it and use it successfully are going to leapfrog. They're going to leapfrog over these other organizations, and
mm,
it will embarrass the other organizations. And
mm,
AI is not an easy technology, as I've said, and some organizations will implement it well, and some organizations it will be a disaster. And those
mm.
organizations that do not implement it well will say, look, I told you AI doesn't work. Be careful. Be careful of that. If organizations tell you AI doesn't work, it means maybe they didn't implement it properly. Maybe it wasn't for
Correct.
them. Maybe it wasn't the right solution. Maybe they didn't do a business case. Maybe they ignored all the rationale behind collecting, relevant and consistent data. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
organizations that do it well and do it properly, they are going to be far more competitive. And it's going to
yeah,
be an issue. And I see governments now around the world kind of catching on to this and saying, and even governments, they're not competitive, but because they tend to be shrinking in size, they want to be more productive. And they're using,
yeah.
and I know there are organizations using AI in the government in a couple of countries.
I often wonder whether ChatGPT and even PMI Infinity have become so appealing to the average project manager because, as you said earlier, I cannot remember what is in all 400 pages of PMBOK. And that is the reality, right? A lot of the time when I'm doing that kind of research, it's like, oh, what were the different kinds of estimation tools and techniques that I can use? Oh, okay, which one am I going to use in this instance? Like they are classic examples. Or
Yes.
I need to write a risk register and I've forgotten what every single column should be. So, can you please remind me of what the structure of that document should be? Now, when you get as old as me, you have these templates that I developed and I've just reuse over and over again. But even that's a bit of a problem because I'm not improving those things. I'm
Right.
maintaining, right, a certain level of knowledge. And I wonder if that's why it's become so popular because it allows you to bridge those gaps in my singular knowledge rather
Yes.
than looking outward and saying, okay, you know what, let's put all that to bed. Let's actually look at the scope and context of this project and understand, is it a viable thing to do? And is the value statement and is the way I'm going to get there? Can you provide me with some guidance on that? And I think another thing I'm hearing from what you're saying is that potentially the roadmap to AI implementation for organizations is actually to start with people's learning around AI tools, neural pathways, those solutions that can be applied and used, giving them that skill, teach a man to fish and you'll never go hungry.
Yes.
Is
Yeah. So
that
listen,
all fair?
I'm not saying that ChatGPT is a bad tool to use, and I see that. So what project managers are doing is they don't go to ChatGPT and say create a risk register for me. Well, some of them do, and then they make a mess of it. But most project managers, they take their last project, they pull a risk register they used from the last project, and they run it through ChatGPT and say, okay, here's my new project. Give me some suggestions on how I can alter this, right? So that's what they
Yeah,
do. Is it more productive? Does it make things better? Absolutely, yes. But are they making logical, good decisions as the project is progressing? Are they looking at the predictions of what's going to happen during the project? Not really. In terms of the
yeah.
roadmap, you nailed it. The roadmap is number one, assess the data. What data do you have in your organization? How accessible is it? Right? How consistent? Is it structured? Is it properly formatted? Right? Second thing is, well, what is it we're trying to improve here?
Mm,
And we have to remember that the world is changing and projects are not getting easier, they're getting more
mm,
complex. So if we have
correct.
a project success rate of 30 to 40% now, if we do nothing, in 5 years it's going to be lower. We've got environmental concerns, we've got trade issues, we've got world order changing, We have
Regulations,
more
standards,
more
everything's
complex.
increasing.
Everything's more
Yeah.
getting more complex, right? So what is the objective you're trying to achieve? I want to get better value out of my project. I want to prioritize my projects. I want to make sure the schedule is accurate. I want to make sure I have a great project process. And you can use AI to do that. Look at the processes in past projects, which ones have been successful. And maybe we start to customize our project processes based on the project type to make them more successful. And then, of course, training. Well, that's me. I have to say it because knowledge and training is kind of what I do. So that is my personal bias, but you definitely need to get some training and knowledge. And then evaluate the solutions, whether it's internal or commercial. And then once you've implemented it, make sure you get that value, right? That's kind of the roadmap you want to go down, I think.
Okay. I'm going to be typing that up for everyone and putting it up on screen because I think that was something we all need to keep in mind. From your perspective as an educator and researcher, why is this transformation critically important, not just to organizations, but for individual project managers and their career development?
Yeah, well, organizations, as I said, it's a competitive world and things are changing. You can't stay the same. You can't stay the same because you're not going to be successful. I want to talk about project managers and their careers because I think that's where it's really important. Um, First of all, there's a lot of misleading information and misinformation out there about everything, but also about AI. And there are I would say there's videos that I've seen and courses that I've seen that use what I call platitudes. And platitudes are AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that, AI is this, AI is that. They don't really help you. What I'm looking for from project managers who want to use this in their career is understand the practical application. Get right down to that knowledge level where you know how it works. And then even if you go out to a vendor and the vendor says, "Oh yes, this is AI," as has happened to me, and you ask a question, they go, "Oh no, we don't do that." Well, maybe it's not AI. So from a career perspective, it's important to get down to that practical application. And yes, it will take some training. Yes, it will take. I can talk about how to do that next, but really for project managers, try and take in as much as you can, and look at it not from a platitude point of view, but from a how am I going to use this perspective.
Absolutely. And looking ahead once again, you studied supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning applications in project management. Which of those AI approaches do you see as having the most transformative impact on enterprise portfolio management specifically and in the shorter term? So, think next 3 to 5 years, you can see the market is moving, you can see that the energy around AI adoption is escalating.
Yes.
Um, but you also see where we're at from a project, program, and portfolio management perspective. So, where do you think we are headed?
Where are we headed? So first of all, I think the most used machine learning tool is going to be supervised learning because it's based on historical data. People can collect historical data. People understand it quite easily. That is going to be the main predictive tool that I think is going to become very, very popular. Unsupervised learning will be used in reference class forecasting. So that's my. And where are we going in the future? That's a great question. We haven't talked about it yet, and it's genetic algorithms. So very
Mm,
briefly, reinforcement learning combined with genetic algorithms. Genetic algorithms are this recombination process for DNA. That's where it comes from. And the way it works in a software perspective is um, you look at a problem and you look at different solutions. And what genetic algorithms can do is it can vary and alter those solutions so that it considers every possibility, even possibilities that a human may not have thought of.
mm,
So there's a process out there called Q learning. Sorry to throw another term at you. It's called Q learning, and it comes from video games. So if
Wow.
you think of the warrior standing there with a sword, right? And they've got to go plunder this castle and get the gold. So they run up to the castle door, and the castle door goes down and smashes them and kills them. They're dead. They lost a life. Now start over. Reinforcement learning. You're not going to do that again. Okay.
Correct.
So now you run into the castle. Wait for the door to go down. Run to the castle. The ogre kills you. Oh, so now there's this learning process. And so reinforcement learning is learning not to make the same mistake twice. And cue learning is about what are all of the possibilities that I could do to solve this problem. Okay.
Yes.
And this is what's coming into, I believe it'll come into project management in the next probably 3 to 5 years if we're lucky. And that's again where I think we're going to make this giant leap into how do I solve this problem? What's the best way to solve this problem? And a project manager can have all the experience and say this is the way it should be done. But if we have reinforcement learning with this cue learning process and genetic algorithms, it can say this is your best way out. This is your best way forward.
Wow.
And I think that's the transformation. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you need to start learning some of these things now, because that's the way of the future. And in terms of project management, these are the tools that are going to come in. We need to understand them, understand how they work.
That is so interesting. I learned something every time I talk to you, Paul. It's so much for my brain.
It's been a long time since we've talked last, and
It has.
I think I've evolved my ideas. You would probably agree.
Yeah,
My process, I've evolved my ideas. I'm hopefully more practical, but it's the same basis. I've stuck to the
it
same
is.
basis of what AI can do, and now we're evolving it into being more practical in project management processes.
I I think that I'm getting that from you today because your books were really focused on collecting the right data, making it available, using the machine learning. I think you were very big on machine learning the last time we spoke, and I think you had just, you built your model and you were really showcasing it at that point in
Yes,
time. So,
yes,
um, and I really loved that because it was the precursor to all of this. If anything, it's lovely watching you evolve through your thinking and knowledge. Like it's very cohesive.
I'm
It's
growing
very good.
old. I'm growing old, but maybe
Yeah.
wiser. Maybe wiser.
I think you're one of the wisest, learned people on this topic. So, anyway, for our listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by the pace
Yeah,
of AI advancement,
yeah,
what's your advice for staying current and building relevant skills? How should project managers and business leaders organize their professional development to
yeah.
remain competitive in this landscape, but just take it one step at a time and make sure that you have a roadmap ahead of you that includes this as one of the tools in your toolkit.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a good point. This is one of the tools in your toolkit. You still have to do everything else in project management. Um, the learning process, there are courses out there. There are free courses on Coursera. I don't know if you know that website out of
Yep.
Stanford University. There's some pretty good free courses there. There are YouTube videos. Be careful. I talked earlier about misinformation and misleading stuff, so you do have to be careful. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. I publish a blog. I published a lot of blog articles. My last one, I think, was last week on ethical use of generative AI tools like ChatGPT. And
I
I
read
do
it. Yep.
have, good for you. Thank you. And so I do have a lot of blog articles. Go through my blogs and build up your skills that way. Um, if you're on PMI, I do publish a blog also on PMI in terms of machine learning. I call it AI IQ. So, and I had stopped for a while, but I'm getting back into it. I stopped for a while because it became a fad. It became very popular, and a lot of people who, how do I put this politely, did not have a good background in AI, all of a sudden became AI experts and produced information. So, but I'm back on PMI now, so that's a good thing. There's also an AI and project management group on LinkedIn run by a good friend of mine, Rich Weller, out of the US. and he'll let you in that group. Just mention my name. Um,
Okay. And I also saw that PMI bought an organization. Are they called AI Cognizant or something like
oh,
that?
Cognizant, yes, that's one of their. I'm not the big PMI person. I deal with PMI and APM. Oh, there's an APM group for those with the Association of Project Management. IPMG, International Project Managers Group. Go on there; they have some stuff too. There are all sorts of conferences. Last year, I was fortunate enough. I presented at a conference in Greece, project management conference in Athens, Greece. I did a workshop, an hour and a half workshop, and did a 45-minute presentation. Then I did an hour and a half workshop the following day. I was fortunate enough to go to Romania, Bucharest. I did a PMI presentation in Romania, and you may ask, why would you go to Bucharest, Paul? Because they asked me, and they were the politest people. They were amazing. Somebody
Oh.
picked me up. One of the PMI volunteers picked me up at 4 o'clock in the morning from my hotel to take me to the airport for my 6:30 flight. So
Oh,
yeah,
that
just
is
look
so
around,
kind.
look around. And the last but not least, get my books. So here,
Yes.
I'm not going to say go buy my books. What I'm going to say is in your organization, you have a training department, and go to that training department and say, hey, why don't we spend small amount of money,
Yes.
buy 5 of Paul's books, and then pass them around to people in the organization? I don't mind, right? So now, in terms of the books, there's a really expensive one that is now a textbook, and that has case studies in it. Oh, actual case. You were asking about case studies. There's case studies in the big expensive book now, AI and project management, and it's being used by 2 universities in the United States for courses that they're teaching there.
Okay.
So if you're looking for what I would recommend in a book, it's the self-driving project. With the self-driving project, you will get um, most of what I've been talking about here in terms of an explanation, plus this idea of AI as an agent. Oh, look at
I
you.
can't yeah, I can't find the other ones. They are here somewhere in my library, but I can't quite see them. But this is my copy, and it's not signed, but hopefully one day, Paul, when you make it to
I
Australia.
will.
Actually, I tell a lie. It is signed.
I
So many, many
sent
years
it to you.
ago.
Remember, I
Yeah,
sent it
that's
to you.
right.
And
Exactly. And
listen,
I kept one of them. So yeah,
anybody who gets the
Paul,
book, I really am looking forward to someday getting to Australia. Listen, I have friends in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra. I would love to do a tour, hopefully next year, but we'll see. And anybody who gets the book, I'll be happy to come and sign it. I'm sure somebody will put me up to do a presentation there. So
absolutely.
yeah,
I will certainly put you up to do a presentation.
I do want to change the world, but I'm very modest about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think we've covered all of those elements. So really we're at the point of wrapping up now, but what I wanted to do was just see if you really had three key takeaways from today,
Yeah.
what would those three things be?
First, we need to collaborate with AI, right?
Yep.
Don't be afraid of it. And when I was talking to my government representative, and I said the biggest issue you probably have is fear, and it's still out there. A lot of people are afraid of AI. It's just another technology. And as you gain knowledge, and this is where the importance of training and understanding what the technology is all about can get overcome that fear, and you can become one of the champions and one of the enablers of doing this. So number one, collaborate with AI, get that knowledge. Second thing is learn a little bit more about statistics. Do not have to be a math whiz, but understand what an outlier is, understand what correlation means. And the third thing, of course, is data management, because AI is
Mm.
based on data. So think about your organization, and whether you're doing AI now or not, what data do you have? What data are you collecting? What data should you collect? I had a former student of mine who came and worked for me doing AI work for a while, and she's now in the PMO in a government organization. And So she's telling them, right, as they're doing their projects, she's moved up in like about 2 years. She's moved up pretty high. And she looks at the data they're collecting. She says, well, we should be collecting this data and this. And she's really starting to reconfigure how they're doing things in terms of she's slowly managing to get AI in there and align what
Mm,
they're doing to being receptive to AI. And I think
mm,
that's what project managers can do in terms of a wrap up the data quality, data management issue. But again, if you want to be a project manager who's one of these enablers, one of these project managers who really is at the forefront of what's happening in project management, work with the organization to start getting this in place. Um, you know, Gaining the knowledge yourself, understanding a bit more about data, what data is being collected, and how it can be applied.
absolutely. And it's even just those strategic organizations with your strategic conversations with your leadership team that
Yeah,
basically says, what is it that we want to be able to predict with more certainty? And
there
then
you
go and have a look at your data and
yeah,
start saying, okay, what of this data could contribute to a better
yeah.
predictive model? I think that would be great.
It was
All right.
it's what I said at the beginning. Remember, I said you're at the end of the project. Look back and see all the unexpected things that showed up, and you
Yeah.
can talk to your leadership team and say, do would it be better if we predicted these things? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're spot on.
Wrapping up.
So, Paul, it's been absolutely fascinating, and it always is fascinating talking to you. I always learn so much from you. And I'm very, very grateful that after all of these years, you've continued to give me so much of your time. So, I'm very, very thankful. Um, your research into using enterprise project data for AI driven insights is exactly the kind of forward thinking approach that our audience hopefully have been receptive to today and have been thankful to learn more about. So, for the listeners that want to learn more about you and your work and connect with you, you've already mentioned LinkedIn, your website for Stone Meadow Consulting as
Yes,
well.
thank you.
Yeah, all good ways of getting in touch with you, and I'll put those details up on screen. Um, and for those wanting a deeper dive into Paul's work, I highly recommend picking up his books. Once again, Applying Artificial Intelligence to Project Management. The second book, How the Project Management Office Can Use Artificial Intelligence to Improve the Bottom Line, and The Self Driving Project, all resources that provide the detailed frameworks and implementation strategies that complement today's discussion perfectly. The transformation from traditional project management to AI enhanced project delivery isn't just about technology, it's about fundamentally improving how we plan, execute, and deliver value through projects. Paul's insights show us that the tools to dramatically improve our project success rates are already in our historical data. We just need the AI techniques to unlock them. So the question isn't whether AI will transform project management, it's whether you and your organization be intentional and organized enough to harness that transformation for competitive advantage. And as you know, I welcome your feedback, hence feel free to drop a comment or a suggestion. Also, if you'd like to show your appreciation for the podcast and the work we do, please do feel free to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/powering projects. So, in closing, remember every project you complete adds to your organization's predictive capability. Start treating the data as a strategic asset, as that's what it truly is. And until next time, keep powering your projects from vision to victory. And remember, if your AI starts predicting that all of your projects will finish early and under budget, it's probably not artificial intelligence, it's probably artificial optimism. Thanks so much and take care. Bye.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional, legal, or financial advice. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organisations or sponsors. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information on project management methodologies and related topics, no guarantee is made regarding the completeness, accuracy, or applicability of the content to your specific circumstances. Listeners are encouraged to consult with qualified professionals before making decisions based on the information shared in this podcast. The hosts, guests, and producers are not liable for any losses, damages, or outcomes resulting from the use of this podcast's content. By listening to this podcast, you agree to assume all risks associated with the application of the information provided. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll find value in our discussions.